American bombers didn't just fight World War II, they defined it. Each one told a story about how the United States prepared, struggled, and eventually dominated the skies. Some became legends, like the Flying Fortress and the Superfortress. Others were stopgaps, rushed into service, and quickly forgotten. But whether famous or obscure, together they shaped the outcome of the war. In this video, we'll explain every U.S. bomber of World War II in the order they entered service. The Douglas B-18 Bolo was America's standard bomber at the outbreak of war, but it was already outdated by the time the first shots were fired. Designed in the 1930s from the Douglas DC to airliner, the B-18 was essentially a passenger plane converted into a bomber. It carried a crew of 6, with a wingspan of 89 feet, and a maximum bomb load of just 4,400 pounds, about the weight of 2 compact cars. Its defensive armament was minimal, only a few machine guns, which left it dangerously exposed. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, the Army Air Forces had more B-18s than any other bomber in service, but they were slow, vulnerable, and no match for modern fighters like the Japanese Zero. Crews quickly realized the Bolo would not survive in frontline combat. Instead, the B-18 was moved to secondary roles. In the Caribbean and along the U.S. coastline, it patrolled for submarines, often armed with depth charges. A handful even claimed kills against German U-boats in the Atlantic. For air crews in the early war years, the Bolo filled a desperate need, keeping the skies covered until better bombers arrived. By 1943, most had been retired, replaced by the B-17 Flying Fortress and the Beta for Liberator. The B-18 never became a legend, but it was a bridge between America's pre-war experiments and the true heavy bombers that followed. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress is one of the most legendary bombers of World War II, and for good reason. It wasn't just a machine. It became a symbol of American determination and industrial power. With a crew of 10, a wingspan of 103 feet, and a maximum weight of more than 65,000 pounds, the B-17 was a massive leap forward from the smaller pre-war designs. It looked and felt like a true strategic bomber. The B-17 bristled with defensive firepower, carrying up to 13 heavy .50 caliber machine guns placed in the nose, tail, waist, and the top turret. Crews called it a flying fortress because almost every angle of approach was covered by gunfire. It could carry nearly 5,000 pounds of bombs, about the same weight as to modern pickup trucks filled to capacity. This payload was not the largest of the war, but combined with the B-17's ability to fly long missions, it made a huge impact. Operating from airfields in Britain, B-17s flew massive daylight raids into Nazi-occupied Europe. Entire formations stretched for miles, filling the sky with hundreds of bombers and thousands of aircrew. Pushing into heavily defended German airspace, the B-17 also flew in the Pacific Theater, where its long range allowed patrols and raids over Japanese positions and shipping. Some were based on Guam and other islands, striking targets that had once been unreachable. The B-17 became famous for its toughness. There are countless stories of flying fortresses limping home with shredded wings, missing engines, or even tails nearly torn off, yet still managing to land and save their crews. For the men who flew them, every mission was a brutal test, with freezing altitudes, constant flak bursts, and swarms of enemy fighters. Survival often depended on the B-17's ability to absorb punishment and keep flying. By the end of the war, nearly 13,000 had been built. Together, they dropped more than 600,000 tons of bombs on enemy targets. The B-17 wasn't just a bomber. It was a key part of winning the air war in Europe. The Consolidated B-2 for Liberator was a true workhorse in the United States Army Air Forces. In sheer numbers, no bomber of the war could compete. It became the most produced heavy bomber in history. The B-24 carried a crew of 10, with a wingspan of 110 feet, slightly larger than the B-17. It could carry up to 8,000 pounds of bombs, equal to 4 fully loaded modern pickup trucks, giving it a clear advantage in payload. It was also faster and had longer range than the B-17. This made it more versatile, serving not only in Europe, but across North Africa, the Mediterranean, and the vast Pacific Theater, where distance mattered most. One of its most famous missions was the 1943 raid on the oil refineries at Ploesti, Romania. B-24s attacked at low level, skimming rooftops to strike the vital German oil supply. The raid caused heavy losses, but it proved the Liberator could reach deep behind enemy lines. More than 18,000 B-24s were built during the war, making it the most produced bomber in history. Although it never earned the same rugged reputation as the B-17, its speed, range, and sheer numbers made it indispensable. The North American B-25 Mitchell became one of the most famous medium bombers of the war. Thanks to its daring role in the Doolittle raid against Japan in April 1942, the B-25 carried a crew of 5 or 6, had a wingspan of 68 feet, and could haul a maximum bomb load of 3,000 pounds, roughly the weight of a large modern SUV. It wasn't the biggest bomber, but it was tough and versatile. It served in every theater of the war, flying missions in Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific. It could perform medium-altitude bombing, low-level ground attacks, and even anti-shipping strikes. The Doolittle raid made the B-25 legendary. 16 Mitchells launched from the deck of the USS Hornet to bomb Tokyo. The physical damage was small, but the raid shocked Japan and gave America a huge morale boost only months after Pearl Harbor. The B-25 was endlessly adaptable. Some versions carried 75mm cannons in the nose, while others bristled with more than a dozen machine guns for strafing. This flexibility kept the aircraft useful in many different roles. By the end of the war, nearly 10,000 had been built. Rugged, adaptable, and unforgettable, the B-25 proved that medium bombers could have a major impact on the global conflict. The Martin B-26 Marauder began with a troubled reputation, but by the end of the war, it had transformed into one of the safest and most effective medium bombers in service. It carried a crew of 7, had a wingspan of 71 feet, and could deliver a maximum bomb load of 4,000 pounds, about the same weight as to small cars. Its design emphasized speed, and it cruised at more than 280 miles per hour. Early models, however, had short wings and high landing speeds. Training accidents were common, and pilots nicknamed it the Widowmaker. Many crews doubted the Marauder could ever become a reliable bomber. Once air crews adjusted and training improved, the B-26's reputation changed dramatically. It flew thousands of missions in Europe and North Africa, targeting rail yards, bridges, and troop concentrations with great precision. By the end of the war, Marauder crews had one of the lowest loss rates of any live bomber. What began as a dangerous gamble became a dependable, respected workhorse. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress was the most advanced bomber of World War II. It introduced technology and size that made it unlike anything else flying at the time. The B-29 had a crew of 11, a wingspan of 141 feet, and could carry an enormous bomb load of up to 20,000 pounds, the weight of 10 fully loaded pickup trucks. It was bigger and more capable than any bomber before it. It introduced groundbreaking features. The crew worked in pressurized compartments, allowing them to fly comfortably at high altitudes. Its remote-controlled gun turrets were guided by advanced sighting systems, making it far more sophisticated than earlier bombers. The B-29 was the backbone of the bombing campaign against Japan. Flying from island bases like Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, crews endured missions that lasted more than 16 hours, pushing both men and machines to the limit. These bombers unleashed massive firebombing raids against Tokyo and other cities, destroying much of Japan's war industry. The scale of destruction was unlike anything seen before. The B-29 is most remembered because of 2 missions. The Enola Gay dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and Boxcar carried the second bomb to Nagasaki. These attacks ended the war, but also ushered in the nuclear age. Only about 3,900 were built, but their impact was enormous. The B-29 was a flying fortress unlike any other, and it brought World War II to its final and fiery conclusion. The Douglas A-20 Havoc was a light bomber that proved incredibly versatile. It was used by American, British, and even Soviet crews in multiple roles throughout the war. The A-20 carried a crew of 3, had a wingspan of 61 feet, and could carry up to 2,000 pounds of bombs, roughly the weight of a family car. What it lacked in size, it made up for in speed and agility. It could reach more than 300 miles per hour, making it difficult for enemy fighters to intercept. The A-20 served as a bomber, ground attack aircraft, night fighter, and even a reconnaissance plane. In Europe, Havoc struck rail yards and airfields at low altitudes. In the Pacific, they attacked Japanese island bases and shipping lanes. On the Eastern Front, hundreds supplied to the Soviet Union flew dangerous missions against German forces. More than 7,000 were built. The A-20 may not have been as famous as the B-17 or B-24, but it earned respect as a dependable and flexible aircraft that could adapt to nearly any mission. The Douglas A-26 Invader arrived late in World War II, but it quickly earned a reputation as one of the fastest and most powerful light bombers of the conflict. It carried a crew of 3, had a wingspan of 70 feet, and could deliver up to 4,000 pounds of bombs, about the weight of 2 modern pickup trucks. It was built to combine speed and firepower. The A-26 could fly at more than 350 miles per hour, faster than many fighters of the day. Some versions were armed with an incredible number of guns. including up to 14 heavy machine guns packed into the nose. The Invader flew missions in both Europe and the Pacific, striking bridges, supply depots, and troop concentrations with precision. Crews praised its power, speed, and versatility. Though it only saw limited service before the war ended, the A-26 was so successful that it continued flying through Korea and even Vietnam. It became one of the most durable and long-lived bombers in American history. From the early war Bolo to the massive Superfortress, American bombers came in every shape and size. Some became legends, others filled forgotten but vital roles. Together, they formed the backbone of U.S. air power. Which bomber do you think made the greatest impact on World War II? Tell us in the comments and subscribe for more World War II Explained.